Hi, this is Danny Doyle, and I'm here with the final portion of my Vision Quest 0% Growth's playthrough tier list. As a reminder, this is specifically for the performance in 0% growths, so it should not be applied to within a growths context. And before we dive into the new units, the Part 4 units, I want to revisit some of the people after Part 3, because I think some people moved up, and possibly a couple moved down, although I think for the most part, the Part 1 and Part 2 units, especially the early Part 2 units, are probably settled where they're at. Not too many going to be moving down. I think some Part 3 units could move down. I think, for example, what's her name? Is it Kashuna? I think the sword nomad, probably moves down, not by much, probably like here, because she was still a very solid Part 3 contributor. Bulan probably moves down a little bit, like here. Ketut moves down to, like, here. Surya can probably go down all to the very bottom of fucking F. No, I think his, like, early game was probably... I mean, it's better than Batari. Batari might actually go even... No, I think F tier's fine. I think F tier's fine. I hate Batari, but, like... was her, like... She did some physic work in that final chapter. That might be worse than... I might have been too generous, actually, last time. Like, Arcady, Lara, everyone above, like, Otili did some stuff sometimes. You stay up there, though. As for the people who... The Part 3 people who move up, Waluyo stonks. I think Waluyo stonks not quite as good as Sarka. But just below her sounds about right. Now, granted, I did feed him, like, every Speedwing fucking imaginable. You know, man got addicted to chicken wings, but I still really, really relied on him to do a bunch of combat. He was the GOAT. You know, Brave Bow Waluyo, Reaver Axe Waluyo, just, like, absolutely incredible. Michael, I think, also goes up. Probably more valuable than Waluyo, because Dancer good. Like, Dancer good, it's always hard where to put the Dancer, because, like, I know that the Dancer always belongs in the highest possible tier, but the question becomes, like, how much is the Dancer getting credit, and how much is the person being danced getting credit, right? And I think, like, below Sarka and Hakulani is probably the right place for him. Do I move Kier up? Kier did actually quite a lot of important stuff. Like, obviously, there's the rigged boss kill, but Kier just being incredibly bulky, I think, was more valuable than that boss kill, and was a nearly indispensable thing on the various, like, defend maps that we had to take care of. I think he's not quite as good as Waluyo was, but he was damn near close. Do I move Onderdonk up? I think Onderdonk is just below Lajos. I think he's in the right place. Surprisingly, I think I'm going to move Titus up, just because on the same logic of, like, Storch still contributing so late into the game and being higher as a result of that, the fact that Titus could help be part of, like, a 2-tile wall, I think earns him a spot directly above Helga. And Vernon. Spur Magic came in clutch, specifically in the Kier's Wife chapter. And I think that pushes him to... Again, just on the same idea of, like, Storch and Titus both being like, oh, you're surprisingly, like, actually doing some stuff. Just getting edged up a little bit. But, of course, he did get replaced by his competition in Zakawat and Zuljalal. Zakawat being his direct competition, but we gotta talk about the Z's together. I think that Zakawat is up to, like, here. Like, the fact that he's just a strictly better, or almost strictly better version of Vernon. And Vernon's quite good. Is nice, and like he did do stuff as a result of that, but the fact that Vernon was a better deploy on one map, because like Spur Magic isn't that good, and I didn't really miss Zakawat, does definitely, I think it holds him out of B tier. I think it's like, it is the big difference maker is like, oh, well, you know, your technically worse version can do your job just as well as you. Meanwhile, Zul'Jalal, I had both Zul'Jalal and Naya out and about and doing stuff, and I think Zul'Jalal just barely edges into B tier because, like, again, he's not around for too long, but when he is, he's quite nice. He's basically a part 4 unit. Like, both him and Zakawat and Batari are basically part 4 units in disguise because they're around for so little of part 3. But he was useful in part 4. Until he died in the Great Massacre. Everyone fucking died in the Great Massacre. But not Radoslav. Radoslav is the fucking king. I think Radoslav is an A tier unit, in the 0% run. Like, he was just so useful. High magic, Nosferatu, high bulk, just everything that you want out of a bulky mage. You got it. But what you don't got is Spur Speed. I think Anissa, she still was very useful in part 3, and like in acknowledgement of that, I'm going to have her at the top of B tier. But I didn't deploy her a single time in part 4. And like for that reason, I'm just dropping her down a little bit. I did deploy you, but like, kind of, okay, maybe I don't move Anissa down because like, I kind of wasn't happy. Well, you've got reposition, right? Maybe I just have them switch places. Because, like, a bulky Cav with reposition is still nice to have in part 4, like, just as that little utility role. And then she could, you know, help out with walling things in the same vein as Titus, where it's like, you're not as good of a wall as Kier, but, like, you can do stuff, especially if you're next to Kier. Yeah, that feels right. That feels right. Now, as for the units from the end of part 2, who I was just sort of like, yeah, they haven't really been around that long, so they can't do that much. Specifically Male and Cygnus, father-daughter. These are phenomenal units. I think Male is absolutely a... Is she an A tier in Zero Growths? It's just like the utility, right? Like staff utility, horse utility, reposition utility. If Stina gets this high for reposition, I think I prefer Male's like utility role plus reposition. And then Cygnus, like, I mean, he was just like the warrior of my dreams. Again, kind of just stealthily a part 4 unit because he's only around for a little bit of part 2. But is he the top of C tier or the bottom of B tier? I think that considering you get better part 4 units if you're just doing combat, and that's kind of all he was, just the top of C tier, because like, again, he's not around that long, and in the big combat maps, like there are people I'd rather be doing combat with, specifically the actual part 4 units. Like they just have better stats than him, but don't sleep on Cygnus. Just like his base stats carried him for quite a while. And the same is true of Raucus. I think I preferred Cygnus just because like bow access is nice for shooting down flyers and stuff. There's scary wyverns in a lot of part 4, like 4-1 and 4-2 both have a lot of wyverns that like I just appreciate being able to shoot down with Cygnus. But Raucus, you know, very similar situation to Cygnus if you're just doing axe combat. Just his bases are quite good, and he can hit things real hard. Go rawr. Okay, and now we move on to the new characters. So first up, we have Erasmus. And Erasmus, like I said, I think he's pretty good for the endgame. His stats are, they don't look all that great, but he's surprisingly competent when he has both of his skills active. That being his personal skill, which is the chivalry, or the, not chivalry, he has Knight Aspirant as his personal skill, and then he has his class skill of Chivalry active. And they do a good job of boosting his stats when he's at 75% HP or higher. But of course, once he drops down, his performance ends up kind of tanking. Still, Paladin out of 10, he was our best stat at Paladin for the last portion of the game, which is a short portion of the game. And there's a couple of maps that are warp skipped, but still, it was nice to have him. I don't think someone who's around for as short as he is can be any higher than B tier. Arguably, Anissa did more. No, I think he did more than Anissa, because, like, they're both kind of only around for one part, right? And I think Paladin, who does good Paladin combat and, like, rescue drop stuff on some pretty difficult maps, is a better contributor than, like, yeah, archers are good in Vision Quest, and spur speed is nice, but I don't know, you can't go wrong with a good statted Paladin. It's close. It's close. Don't tell anyone who only plays vanilla Fire Emblem how close the Paladin and Archer are to each other. And then there's Timonen, who, of the Part 4 units, probably has, well, ignoring the two Gotos, he probably has, like, the best combat of them, but it's not that good. It's not, like, his combat's better than Erasmus's. Well, on average, his combat's better than Erasmus. I think full HP Erasmus has better combat than Timonen. Starting with, like, the ranks, I'm trying to find an excuse to not put Timonen in C tier, but I think he's just, like, worse than these. Not worse than you. It's like here, he's worse than, like, the other functional Part 4 combat units, just because he shows up later. But, like, I don't know, Brave Lance with crit bonus is nice, I guess. Yeah, he's got reposition, so, you know, that's something. Repossession utility is actually definitely very nice. Just, it sucks that it's on an infantry unit when I've got, like, better repoers, right? I've got Rustlin, I've got Mail, I've got, like, so many good. Stina, just, like, yeah. I mean, you know it. You know fucking an Est in a Zero Growths playthrough. I'm sorry, Sigrid. I'm sorry. Notably, I also think she's the worst unit in the game in vanilla. That's just, despite the fact that ROM hack Ests are actually good, as opposed to vanilla Ests, she just shows up too late and, like, doesn't really do anything for her trouble. Like, you super train her to win around the final boss when you could just do that with fucking Lori instead, or Susanna, or any number of other people. But she's fun. Like, I'm glad that she exists. She's fun. Well, presumably she's fun. I've never actually used Sigrid. I have used Cassius, though. Cassius is very good. Again, it's so hard to judge these units who are around for, like, 4 maps. But he was an essential part of specifically the prison warp skip, and the endgame warp skip. Although the endgame warp skip, like, that's more the secret shop than him. Actually, I think I used Radislav as my warper. Either way, it's so hard to judge. Like, these units who are around for, like, no amount of time, I think he's better than Timonen. So probably there. Anwen is just, like, a worse version of Cassius, but, like, worse Cassius is still, like, I don't know, good for some warp skips. She's probably less useful than Timonen as a result of just, like, showing up a little bit later and not having the combat that he has. And the summon, I guess. Like, do we want to give Chicken credit? Like, that was a fun cheese, but it wasn't actually necessary. This is so... this is so cringe. Susanna, you're around for 1 fucking map. I mean, 2 technically, but you died. Does Susanna edge out of F tier just because, like, she has Goto combat? Probably. Is she better than Zoya? Probably. Is she better than Cashew? Probably not. Cashew helped in a map. The thing is that Susanna helped in a map where I had a bunch of really strong people. Cashew helped in a map when I didn't. And I think I prefer that, even though he, like, shooting down a flyer per turn is, like, less good than being able to use brave weapons, but I had other people to use brave weapons and other people to do combat. Plus, Susanna was annoying to recruit. I'm not counting that against her, but it makes me want to punch her smug little face. And then Laurie is the same deal. Like, everyone in Part 4 is a fucking Goto. Or, like, half of them, at least. She's probably, like, better than Anwin. Better than Timonin, worse than Cassius. I don't know. This is, like, the most... I hate it when people make tier lists and, like, don't give reasons for why they're ranking people the way that they are. But, like, with especially the last half of the Part 4 units, it's the most vibes-based rankings. And I just, like, her vibes are that she's worse than Cassius because she kills the final boss and does, like, a lot of stuff on the second to last map. But, like, I don't know. It's vibes out of 10. I genuinely... I hate that this is the way that we're ending the tier list because it's like... I swear I do actually have logical reasons for most of these rankings, but when we get into Part 4 and it's like, oh, well, you're around for a couple of maps, but you're really good on those couple of maps, where do I rank you? Shrug emoji? I don't know. Where would you rank all the Part 4 people? Like, it feels weird to have Erasmus as the highest of them. Maybe I'm being... he's probably... Is he worse than Cassius? Does he belong in C tier or does Cassius belong in B tier is the question. Cassius is around for 1, 2, 3, 4 maps. Yeah, despite being like a big part of our big warp skips, it's just really hard to give him credit. Yeah, I think this is right. It feels right. It feels right. Like I said, it's kind of just all based on feeling and vibes. And I hate that, and it's just what Vision Quest does. Late game Vision Quest does that to tier lists. This is why I haven't made a Vision Quest, like, regular tier list, and probably never will. Just because, like, when you run into the Part 4 unit... Well, there's also, like, everyone being kind of, like, not quite homogenous, but a lot of units are a very, like, oh, well, they're good if you train them. Just, like, applies to most people. So, like... It's just not really a super rankable cast. But tell me how you feel about my rankings. And I hope to see you for the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in to this whole wild and wacky playthrough. Bye-bye.